Welcome to the Westside Investors Network, WIN, your community of investing knowledge for growth. This is the Real Estate Professionals Investing Podcast for real estate professionals by real estate professionals. This show is focused on the next step in your career, investing. Thank you for listening. And please, if you like our content, rate us on your podcast provider. Just a quick disclaimer, the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are for educational purposes only and should not be construed as an offer to buy or sell any shares or securities, make or consider any investments, or take any other action.
Welcome back to another episode of the Deal Deep Dive segment on the Westside Investors Network podcast. I'm your host, Trent Werner. In this segment, our featured guests will share their unique stories on a specific deal they've invested in. We will dive deep into finding the deal, financing the deal, writing an offer, and the due diligence. Do us a solid and smash that subscribe button, leave us a rating, and share this episode. And now, let's dive deep.
Welcome back to the Westside Investors Network podcast. I'm your host, Trent Werner. In today's Deal Deep Dive episode, we're joined by Chris Linger with Up Plex Multifamily. Chris started his investment career with his own personal portfolio before meeting his wife, and they ended up partnering to create Up Plex Multifamily. They started as limited partner passive investors, learning the business, and have now grown into a general partnership role that manages over $250 million in assets under management. Today, we're going to talk about a 200-unit multifamily apartment complex in Duncanville, Texas, that was purchased 2 years ago. So you'll hear about the interest rate environment that Chris has dealt with, as well as the different capital expenditure requirements that the lender put in place for him. Now let's welcome Chris Linger.
Welcome back to a Deal Deep Dive episode on the Westside Investors Network podcast. Today, Chris Linger is joining us with Up Plex Multifamily, as well as accelerated business coaching. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thanks for having us, Trent. I appreciate it. Yeah.
We are going to talk about a 200-unit deal in Texas. But before we do that, I'd love to hear more about Up Plex Multifamily and how you got that started.
So thank you. Up Plex started 2017. We had our own little portfolio. My wife and I, at the time, we hadn't met. She actually started that business and started the initial intentional investing into multifamily. When we met up, we both were landlords in different aspects, but she was in the process of purchasing 2 4-unit complexes, 2 quadplexes. And once that was done and we were into a relationship, we decided we wanted to invest together and grow that conversation and grow that plan. And we actually grew it out to 35 units between 2017 and 2020. We converted when I retired from the military in 2020. We actually sold most of the stuff in 21 and converted over into syndications. So the Up Plex multifamily is essentially syndications towards multifamily, but we've also grown out to mobile home parks, self-storage, and we even carry some notes. So we've really diversified our portfolio. We've gone from $3.5 million in assets to over $300 million in assets in that short period of time. So it's been really a major growth period, which also ties into the accelerated business coaching. We solved our problems in scaling. And along the way, we came across, as you can see, we're part of the 10X community. We came across a business coaching program through Grant Cardone and the 10X community that helped us to see the potential of we solved our problem, we can help others solve theirs in syndications. So we help people set up their systems, be able to grow and scale at a fraction of the cost of bringing somebody in-house. That's our focus, is towards syndicators to some extent. However, we have other businesses that have come to us and said, hey, I see what you're doing. I'd like to get involved with that real estate stuff, but I need help in my business as well. And so we have different clients of different areas, landscaping, restaurateurs, custom car parts, stuff like that. Just all kinds of different people because business is business. And it's everybody feels like their niche is special, but the complex portions or the basic mechanics of business are the same, and you hit similar breakpoints at different times. So that's kind of the quick story of, but we built a virtual assistant agency out of getting into that business coaching program, knowing that we could help others, and people coming to us saying, how'd you do it? And instead of letting somebody else reap those benefits, we decided to try to help people, because when you're in that mix of syndicators and business people, you have a little bit more in tune and in touch with helping them grow as well. And so that's kind of been our thing throughout the process.
Very nice. So, like most people that eventually get into syndication or larger real estate investments, you started off with your personal portfolios and then saw that a bigger deal with larger number of units and larger numbers really didn't take that much more effort. It just had a little bit different math behind it in terms of the number of zeros. But then you rolled into Up Plex. Did you guys, when you started or combined into Up Plex, were you on the limited partner side or the general partner side when you first started?
When we first started, we were partners ourselves, just the two of us. We weren't taking investor money, and we were also self-managing. So
Okay.
it was a little bit more, and we were doing the self-management long distance. Neither one of us were local to those properties. So it was all about building those systems. Absolutely. And
And then,
that's actually what helped us to roll into syndications. Like when we learned more about it and understood it better, we had people who were like, man, you're doing so well. You're basically generating, we were making more money in real estate than my wife was in her anesthesia career at the time. And people saw that, heard that, and they were like, hold on, how do I get involved? And we just didn't know how to do that for other people. So it took a little bit of time. We prepared ourselves, ourselves up for that transition. And then we were able to take off into the syndication side.
so when you two began syndication, it sounds like you jumped right into the general partnership and then brought in limited partners for capital. Is that correct?
We actually went into a mentoring program, and along the way, just before we did that, we jumped into our first opportunity as passive investors. In the first 9 months after I retired, we went into 8 different syndications as passive investors so that we could learn the process. What does an investor want to know? What are we missing? How do different people speak to their investors so that we could put together our own personality, our own way that we want to talk with people, and we wanted to answer the questions that we had that maybe other people weren't answering. And so we actually joined, like I said, 8 different syndications with 5 different syndication groups so that we could get those different voices and see what was out there, what we liked and didn't like.
And that's something I want to pause on for a second. And that's, I've heard it before. I didn't do that myself because I was thrown into the general partner side. But hearing people that have become general partners that started off as limited partner investors or passive investors, you get so much info without having to run everything and figure everything out right away. You're able to see, like you said, Chris, how they're communicating with you as an investor, how they're running their deals, how they're underwriting their deals, all those things. And, if the deal is running how it should, you're making money at the same time. So I think that's a great way for someone that wants to eventually become a general partner, invest in some syndication deals, invest as a passive investor, see how it operates before you eventually roll into the general partnership side.
Absolutely. It's experience in the role of the person you're trying to bring into the deal, whether it's as a passive investor or as a GP, that really helps you to understand what questions need to be answered, how far do I need to go, how much more do I need to know, and what, more importantly, by having that team available to you, if you don't know an answer to something, you have somebody you can reach out to ask questions on your deal, on their deal that you're passive in. Even if you get your own general partnership deal, they're still steps ahead of you. So you can go back to them and ask questions that are pertinent to their deal that they have, but it helps you in your deal and understanding how to underwrite or how to talk about your deal as well.
Exactly. So now, Chris, let's talk about this Duncanville, Texas deal. You said before we started recording, it's 200 units in Texas. You've owned it for a couple of years now. What are some of the other details or metrics that you're willing to share about this project?
Let's see, we bought this in March of 22. We had floating rate debt on it. And I wish back then that I went ahead and purchased the 3-year rate cap. We only did a 2-year rate cap. So, but the great part to that deal, it's just south of Dallas, Texas. It's in Duncanville, and it's right near 2 highways. So location is very important when you're looking at a deal. And this particular property has huge traffic going by it, has great visibility. It's close to everything. And so we've actually been able to stay ahead of those interest rate payments, which is uncommon to many deals that were bought around that time, the rates just climbed so fast. We were actually staying ahead of the interest rate increases with our floating rate debt. Yes, we did have a rate cap in place, but there was a big jump that happened very quickly. Within 6 months, we were getting reimbursed by the rate cap. So we were already at our strike price, our upper interest rate we had to pay. So that's one of the things that I'm happy to share about. Maybe not happy, but I'll share about. And because it's a struggle many of us went through. And then right now, with where the market has remained since then and continued to climb, I will say that we just got a broker opinion value the other day that, not that I was surprised where it was, but I was not happy with where it was with the progress that we made along the way. And I'll talk more about that later as the conversation develops. The other portion that I would talk about is broker's opinion of value, or the value of the property today. We've owned this thing for 2 years, and when we got our broker opinion of value last month, I won't say that we were surprised by where the price was, but it does for what we've added in value to the property. And I can talk more about that later as we develop the conversation. The rationale for that will come out for you as far as where I'm thinking, where I'm talking versus the uncontrollable of the market and the decompression of the cap rates.
So Chris, when you were looking at this deal initially, what factored into the decision to actually pursue this deal? Was it a value add deal? Was it, what enticed you and ultimately got you to pursue this deal?
There was a couple of things. One, we were in a network of people that somebody had actually mentioned, I guess I'll say on the side, they were selling this deal. We had seen it in quick glance, had not underwritten it yet. And once they mentioned it, we went back and took another look, because knowing the owners, it wasn't necessarily an in with the purchase, but knowing them, we knew that we were going to be looking at a quality property. It did have value add to it because it's the 70s. Of course, there's going to be value add, but we knew that they are sturdy, strong running people that provide a quality location. They don't let the deferred maintenance build up and stuff like that. The other thing was interest rates were changing at that time, or getting ready to. And we thought that there might be some leeway in what was expected as a sales price. And in the overall, it was just kind of a middle of the fairway, a nice little shot that looked like it would do well long term in every aspect, even with the potential for interest rate increases.
What was your target, or what is your target hold time for this project?
Target hold is 3 to 5 years. And right now we just finished the 2-year mark. And the estimated returns were 8% cash on cash and a 90% return on investment. So roughly a 1.9 equity multiplier.
And going into this deal, I know you said it's 1970s, so of course there's going to be some value add component to it. What were you and your team really expecting to do? Was it, your standard unit turns, exterior uplift? What was your kind of plan to operate this deal aside from just raising rent?
Initially, our plan was to do about 100 interior upgrades. And by the time we closed, the lender actually asked us not to do that. They said cut back on the number of upgrades, full upgrades, but they wanted every unit to be touched. So we had to do a small upgrade into each unit just to bring them up to date a little bit. And then the other was roofing was probably the next biggest thing that we had to take care of. And there were some siding issues. Those were probably the bigger CapEx projects that we had going on. But and in that market, the interiors have made a difference. We're seeing roughly $120 difference between a classic and an upgraded unit. So spending $5,000 and $6,000 a unit is not a bad opportunity.
And I recently went through the whole roof scenario on one of our assets. And so I'm curious, when you were looking at the roof and siding, I'm imagining those are going to be pretty big bills that you're going to have to look at. How did you plan for that, and how did you, I guess, appropriate the right amount of funds for those two specific capital expenditures?
When we built our CapEx plan with the lender, we went to them with our CapEx plan, and they agreed to fund the renovation costs fully. The you're right. The roof was a $300,000 project, roughly 25% of our renovation years old. So we knew that it was going to need repair before we sell. And that's why we added it to our CapEx plan. But the overall was that we didn't have to do that right at the beginning of our project, which meant that we could hold off on borrowing that money from the lender. It saved us on mortgage costs, and it would also provide a new buyer a newer roof. I would rather buy a property with a 1 to 2 year old roof than a 4 and 5 year old roof, right? Mm-hmm. So, and especially more than a 15-year-old roof. So there was an extra add. So as I was saying about the interiors, sometimes it can be a little bit delayed in your business plan based off of people moving in and out. And like many people after COVID and after the moratorium and after the emergency stuff had all dried up, right? All that money, people were still used to not paying their rent. And so we were hit with a lot of delinquency at one point as well. And so we had to change property managers, and we're now back on track with that. But it's also included in there is we've actually now exceeded the full renovation upgrades of units that the lender has asked us to complete before finishing out our business plan. And we still have the money available to do the little touches that they were asking us to do in each apartment. So we really did a good job of speculating what we could do, setting those expectations, and now we're just meeting those expectations to be able to close out the deal when the time comes.
And now here's a word from our sponsor.
Get things done while you're on the move. Learn more about working with a virtual assistant through Offsite Professionals. It's a great way to get all the things done that you need to get done, have freedom in your time, and streamline your life by automating your business. Stop spending time on the tasks that you can delegate and start spending more time on your superpower. Call us today at 503-446-3177 or visit our website at offsiteprofessionals.com.
Uptown Syndication is now offering a syndication coaching program for you to take your real estate portfolio to the next level. This is your opportunity to have experienced syndicators, AJ and Chris Shepard, coach you on your way to controlling your real estate investing future. Our coaching program will provide you with the tools and framework needed to begin syndicating real estate in your target market. Go to uptownsyndication.com today to learn more.
So it's interesting that you bring up the delinquency aspect that you were challenged with, because what we've seen in our portfolio is last year we had a vacancy issue. There's a lot of people that, rents weren't coming down like they thought they were, and we just had a tough time filling some of the units. So we did have to go in and renovate the interiors. And then we were able to get through the vacancy problem. And now we're having a delinquency issue. Collecting rent has been tough. We have a lot more evictions. So I'm curious to hear more about the delinquency issue. And if you had that vacancy problem prior to the delinquency issue, or if it has, you had good occupancy and now it's just a collection problem.
So that's a great question because it's everybody's problem, right? I think one of those two is everyone's problem. And what we found was we noticed right after we hit our 1 year mark, everything was going really well. The delinquency was down. We were like 93% occupied. And then we slowly saw this uptick of delinquency. And about the third month, it was still continuing to grow. It wasn't terrible, but it was still continuing to grow. And so we asked, hey, what's going on here? Oh, yeah, we're seeing that everywhere. We're seeing it across the board. This is, we'll say, April of 23. And I was like, well, we need to start formulating a plan on how we're dealing with that, right? This is where being involved with your property management, being collaborative makes a huge difference in how your property is going to run and how it's going to manage. And I gave them like a week. We talked again, gave them one more week. They didn't have a plan put together yet. Like we specifically asked, what are you guys thinking? What are you going to do? And it's what we're seeing. Like that's just it's almost like, oh, it's the way it's always been done, right? Type of comment. And we were like, there's a way to get out of this, guys. And it looks to me like the way out is going to be getting a different property management at this point. So we did. It took us a month and a half or so before we were able to replace the property management, but we did so. And our delinquency issue became a vacancy issue to some extent because you got to get rid of stuff, right? And we were actually evicting 12 to 15 people a month to get people out that weren't paying. And our property is all bills paid. So it's just an extra suck on us, right? And thankfully, the new property management had different not necessarily different criteria, but they had different pools of people and ways to advertise that they were able to draw in double-digit new leases each month. Even in December, we had 12, if I remember correctly. We had 12 new leases, which is a really slow month usually.
Mhm.
And on top of that, we were able to, because we were able to get rid of the people that weren't paying, bringing in paying customers, we were getting rid of that delinquency. It did take us about 4 months to basically get ourselves to a spot that was manageable. We were over 90% occupied, with the exception of 1 month. We were over 90% occupied the whole time, and still evicting double-digit people for like 4 months. And then the vacancy side of things, they were filling those up. Delinquency, we went from $80,000 a month in delinquency down to $20,000 and less. And today we're closer to 8 to 12 is what I'll say over the last couple of months. So they're still not perfect, but we're now 97% occupied instead of 90%, and everybody's paying for the most part. We only have 2 evictions the last 2 months, so pretty stable in the overall. And really it boils down to just getting that team concept, working with them. They really don't spend a lot of money on marketing. They're doing more like out in your face, kind of dropping off pamphlets and stuff like that. One of the things they told us about the 3rd month in is that we made them go back and think, what were we doing before COVID when we had struggles? Because after COVID, it was like you just sat back and the people came to you, right? And the money was coming in. It made it very easy. People got lazy and they forgot their systems that they used to have in place. And so we were a great tool for them to reboost the whole company into, hey, this is what we need to do, guys, because this is working over here. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. And I have a follow-up question because I'm curious. So we're in Portland, Oregon, which is renowned for one of the tougher landlord tenant markets because the tenants get to do whatever they want. And it's, we have to battle that. In Texas, I've heard it's a little bit different. So when someone, let's say, they become delinquent, they've missed the first month that they've missed, how long from then does it typically take you and the property managers to get that unit back from those delinquent tenants?
So in the state of Texas, once they got rid of the emergency status, the moratorium status, we went back to a 3-day notice to vacate. So once they're late, you can give them 3 days to get out or you're filing eviction. In this particular county where this property is located, they remained with 30 days. If you take any housing subsidies like Section 8 tenants, then your entire property is subject to, you will wait 30 days before you can file the eviction. Immediately after the moratorium was cleared, I would say that it was a 4 to 6 week wait with the courts. So you were talking about 2 to 2.5 months before you could actually get a judgment, and another 10 days before you could get the writ filed. And then it could be a week to 2 weeks before the judge would show. So we'll say 3 months right after the moratorium. So we'll say mid to late 22. Today, we're able to still do the 30-day notice to vacate, but we can file eviction. And so far, we've had some that have been to court within 10 to 12 days. And then, so basically, we can get them out within 2 months. Our carried, for the 2 evictions we have this month, the carried balance is $5,600. So it's 2 months worth of rent for each of them. Whereas there were people with $10,000 and $12,000 before.
And that was more of a curiosity question for myself. I don't know how, it might be interesting for listeners to hear, because in our market and what we deal with is, we have a 10 days, the earliest one that we can give for non-payment, but that only includes the current month. It doesn't include any outstanding, past due balances. And if we want to go that route, then it's 30 days. And it usually ends up taking us, anywhere from 3 to 6 months, depending on, what goes on in the first hearings and everything like that. And so I was curious if you guys, it sounds like you guys are able to get possession back a little bit quicker than what we are. And then I guess my follow-up question to that is, if the tenants do end up moving out, you get possession back, do you have a collections process for that money, or are you just writing it off and it is what it is?
That's a great question, because I know a lot of people that just write it off and let it go. And
Mhm.
we've actually made some connections in our other business. We've in the coaching side, we've actually made connections with folks that own a very successful collections company. And so now we're in the process of going back to the property management, get the data that we need to go chase after these people. And they have a pretty good collections rate that, and they're trying to grow their business. So we're happy to make that connection for folks if they're interested in trying to do that as well. They're based out of California, but they service nationwide. So we are, I love what you're thinking, because we've just let it go previously, and I would love to collect even 30% of the amount owed. Is a huge bump in everybody's NOI if you can go back and recollect it. So yes, we're going to start collecting back rent and evicted rent from people. Absolutely.
Sounds like your team and our team are having very similar conversations right now.
Love it.
So Chris, you're, just over 2 years into this deal. Obviously, you've already mentioned some of the challenges, and it sounds like you've handled some of those obstacles pretty well. What are the good things or the pros about this project that you have to share?
So one of the pros to our underwriting is that we're very conservative in how we looked at this. We knew that interest rates were getting ready to decompress, that interest rates were going to be going up, right? And so we actually, when we underwrote this, we underwrote it with an exit cap rate of a 5.75, and right now in the Dallas market we're at a 6.75. And this comes back to that broker opinion of value that I was talking about, because we were expecting a 1.9 equity multiplier, but the cap rate has decompressed further beyond what we had actually planned for our exit. Our value has actually, it's about $500,000 less than our purchase price that we did at the moment. So terrible time to sell, right? However, we know that cap rate's coming back in. And what's great is, for as far as C-class moves, when there is that shift in cap rates, we know that this deal's still going to be able to perform, because we underwrote a 5.75, but there were C-class properties selling at mid fours at one point. And we don't even have to go that far to get back to our projections for our equity multipliers and to exceed them. We just need to get back down to like a 5 or a 5.25, and we'll be good. So that was one of the things that we saw as a strong point to this property all the way through, was the I guess I'll say, for the return side, telling the investors this is what we're looking at, but knowing that the actual and reality is we could do far better than that when that cap rate comes back down through. The performance of this property was always set on its location. That's number one thing when you're buying a property, is make sure you've got a good location, good visibility, or something that draws them to that location, right? That makes people want to live there. And this had great opportunity for that. And then the other one was, we just felt like it was a well-oiled machine. There really wasn't any major deferred maintenance. It's just things that happen over time, right? And so the siding is a one-time fix for the most part. The roof, one-time fix. Everything else was enact the business plan, stay on top of the market, keep it going and keep pushing. Especially as interest rates rose, it was a major impactor for a lot of people. And what it was for us, instead of impacting us, it was a driver for us. Interest rates are going up, so is our rent. We're going to keep pushing. And so we were really moving for the last 2 years. Actually, right now we have exceeded, our NOI exceeds the projected NOI, which is always a plus for this time frame. And in the overall, we've actually been able to take our NOI up 36% in 2 years. So
Wow.
we're excited about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would be. Now, if we can get interest rates to calm down, that's going to be a home run.
Absolutely. It's going to kill it. We knew it from day one. We knew it before day one. I told you that we found out about the deal after the fact. They were I guess they weren't getting as much activity as they thought they would for the deal. And so when they mentioned it in our group, activity picked up a little bit. And we happened to see them like the weekend after we underwrote it. And I said, hey, are you open to preliminary offer, right? To get it off, and not, she's like, we're only like 6-7 days from call for offers. I'm not going to take an early offer right now. I'm not going to entertain it. That saved us about $500 to $1 million, depending on where I would have been for that offer. But it saved us from that. We actually bought it at what I call a discount, because I had it underwritten for almost $1 million more.
And that's with conservative underwriting.
Yeah.
Good for you.
So it worked out well because of the interest rates and everything. It would have been really tough to make it up, I will admit. But yeah, we've done really well on that property. It's location is key. And your management, being involved, making sure that you're involved with that management. Don't set it and forget it. Make sure you've got somebody coming by every so often, surprise visits, and more importantly, be collaborative with the PM, as well as talk to the accounting folks, the people in the back office, to make sure that things are that you understand where the money's going. What else can we do? Can we cut back on something? So we're pretty involved in that area as well.
Very nice. Well, Chris, where can people connect with you, maybe learn more about Up Plex or accelerated business coaching?
Sure. The easiest is to email at invest@upplex.com, up-plex.com. That's the easiest way to get a hold of us. You're always welcome to our website, same domain, and click on a couple of links there. And we're happy to have discussions and see what we can do to help people. Like you said, we're open to other areas in the U.S. We do a lot of the Sun Belt, and then we're in Kentucky and North Carolina at the moment as well. So love it.
Very nice. Well, Chris, thank you so much again for sharing about your Duncanville, Texas deal, as well as letting us all hear more about Up Plex as well as accelerated business coaching.
Thanks so much, Trent. Appreciate it. And I hope that everybody was able to learn something out of this, or gain some more experience.
I'm sure they will. You had a lot of good info to share today, and even talking about this whole delinquency dilemma, and it sounds like, we're not the only ones, you're not the only ones dealing with it. I think that in itself is going to be very valuable for our audience.
I agree. It's nice to know that you're not the only ones going through something. There's other people out there. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks so much. Take it easy.
Take 3.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Real Estate Professionals Investing Podcast on WIN, your community of investing knowledge for growth. We hope that this episode has increased your knowledge and added value to your path to freedom. If you would, please take a second to rate us so that we can get more great investors to interview. If you or someone that you know wants to be on, please visit westsideinvestors.com and fill out our form to be on the show. Thank you again, and enjoy your day.